Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back. 𝗤𝘂𝗃𝗁𝗂 here. We are testing out, how do I say this? We are testing out how to manage and control and use anchors when we're shipping or sailing. Last tutorial was more complicated than I anticipated. It's not really complicated, it's just learning the muscle memory. A couple of times we got pulled up on maybe some things that I don't know why we got pulled up, but regardless, we got there in the end. We figured it out, and today we're going to try and learn some more. So today we're going to see whether or not the anchor holds, and I think if we do everything like we did in the last tutorial, it should hold perfectly well. I've already tested this out before doing any of these tutorials, dropping the anchor super hard, digs deep down into the ground, really has a good grip. I've also managed to create a bit of anchor drag by changing the environment, situation, etc. So yeah, I'm quite confident this is going to work really well. Right, you are anchored in an anchorage. Check if the anchor holds. Okay. So what I'm doing really is taking some visual points of reference to see if the ship is moving. So dead ahead we've got a little bush there at the bottom of the hill. Off to my right we have starboard side we have a clump of 3 trees together that seem to be sort of one and the same. And over on the port side it's a little difficult because we've got some buildings there, but I can definitely see that we are creeping on the buildings this side. Now we've got a bit of wind coming in from the northeast. That was the easiest tutorial ever. Why did they say 20 minutes for that? That was so weird. So there was a small amount of creep over on the left hand side and a small amount of creep here. This mast was originally bang in location with this. So there was a small amount of movement, but fundamentally I think we were holding. What was happening perhaps was that the wind was maybe just blowing us ever so slightly because there was no current. Alright, heave the anchor. Let's jump straight into the other one. I don't know how many tutorials we'll get through today. It depends how quickly I hit a problem and how long it takes me to overcome that problem. But it should be all good. It should be all good. We shall see. Right. You are anchored, but you need to get going. Heave the anchor the correct way so you can sail away. Right, okay. This is where we come into some problems. Right, so we're going to have to switch to desktop view. Open up the LXP. Go to courses. Find the anchoring courses and let's continue from where we left off. Test if the anchor holds. We've done that. How to complete the scenario. To test if the anchor holds, first check if you have no astern speed over ground. Okay, I didn't do that. Then put the engine slightly into reverse so the chain tightens. I didn't do that either. I didn't do any of this. How did I pass that course? Oh dear. You can see this in the tension value in the anchor panel. If the value does not jump up and down a lot and the ship does not move astern, then the anchor is holding. In this scenario, if the tension in the chain is above 60 tons, the scenario completes. Okay. I should have read this first because I had no idea I was meant to be doing any of that stuff. How to heave an anchor. Right, getting the anchor back out of the water also requires some planning. You should check the other ships around you and plan how you intend to sail away. You cannot just turn on the windlass to heave the anchor because it is not designed to pull the weight of the ship. To reduce the tension on the anchor chain, the engine should be powered slightly ahead. When the chain is moving, the ship should also move ahead slowly. Make sure you do not go faster than the windlass, 3 knots, to prevent overtaking the chain. It can damage the hull or foul the anchor when the chain ends up under the ship. You can use the bow thruster to move the bow to the opposite side of the anchor so the chain does not touch the hull. When you have reached the position of the anchor and the chain is vertical, the ship should stop so that the anchor can be lifted from the seabed without swinging. This is going to be quite tricky then. As you heave the anchor chain, it should be hosed clean since it can take all kinds of dirt from the seabed. Larger ships have an installation in the house pipe that spray water on the chain. I've often wondered why there's water coming out of there. Now I know. It's so obvious when you know, isn't it? So when the anchor is back home, it can be secured against the hull to make sure it does not bang around while sailing. The chain will be fastened with cable tensioners and the hawse pipe can be sealed with cement or foam. Give the ship a small forward speed, 0.2 knots, before heaving the anchor. When you reach the anchor, slow the ship down and stop, less than 2 knots. The scenario is completed when the anchor is home. Okay. So now we know. Let's have a go at this. So we're going to give it a tiny amount of throttle. So we're already doing more than 2 knots forwards, which is a bit tricky. There's no tension on the anchor, so we can start pulling that up, unless it's on the other side. It's on the other bloody side, look. Tension is at 41, so I don't need to put any engine on at all, because we're already doing 3 knots. So let's start heaving that. See, the tension on the chain, is increasing. I do not feel like this is going well. I've got the engines in reverse, but instead of going backwards, we're actually increasing in speed. How is that possible? Are we being pulled along by the chain, perhaps? This is not right, I don't think. Yeah, look, the chain is right underneath. Is it? No, it's not. Look, we are actually doing it, but we're doing 2.5 knots, despite being in reverse. You're going too fast. You should stop when the chain is vertical. Well, look at that. Okay, I'm confused here. All right, speed over ground would probably help me a bit more, but we've got 12% reverse engine thrusters, right? But we're still going 2.2 knots forwards. I don't understand how. There is a 0.2 knot current. Okay, that maybe is applicable to that. We also had a bit of thrusters going on, which is probably not ideal. But I tell you what, that was pretty close to being perfect, other than the fact that I didn't stop when I needed to stop. So I actually need to put more reverse thrusters on. I need to trust my instruments more, pay more attention to the current and the wind, because that's all going to affect how quickly we're moving. and try and be in charge of that rather than not being in charge of that, basically being subject to that. Interestingly though, the tension on the anchor kept going up and up and up and up and up, which is the opposite of what I was expecting, I'll be honest. Right, starboard side, tension 42 tons if you look. So we're starting to move forward. So we can heave the anchor because we are moving forward. But it does say when the chain gets vertical. Now, on a proper ship, I would imagine that you'd have someone standing at the bow telling you when the anchor's vertical. Because how the hell am I meant to see from here if we're vertical or not? I'm going to put a bit of bow thruster on here. We're still picking up speed. I'm at 87 reverse thrusters here. Right, there we go. Let's try 50%, see if it's still coming down. No, that's going up, see? I'm going to have to go maximum reverse thrusters here to try and get control of the speed that we're moving. Bow thrusters can come off a smidge. Right, we're going to start going backwards here, which is not what we want. Now we're going in reverse, and now I need to put a bit of forward thruster on. There you go, simple as that, he says. That is incredibly stressful. Basically, you just want to creep forward at 0.2 knots the whole way through that. Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. That's basically it. Just use the engines to control your forward movement, and then try and use the bow thrusters to stop the front of the ship from moving around too much. That's all I did there, and it seems to work. So slightly stressful, I'll be honest, but mission completed. Right, the alternative anchoring method. This is going to take an hour and a half. An hour and a half for this one. Goodness me. And that's if I don't cock it up. Very difficult. Excusez-moi. I also wonder whether or not it would be advisable to have another camera option that is permanently based below water, so you can see the anchor if you want to, like an anchor cam, something like that. You are nearing an anchorage. Try the alternative anchoring method for large ships. Anchor holding. Lower the anchor when speed is below 2 knots. Okay, so again, we need to do a bit of research. You can't just anchor anywhere, especially with a large ship. The place for anchoring must be planned well in advance. Often an anchorage will be assigned to you by the local authorities, but sometimes you have to find a place yourself. The area should not be too deep. The windlass motor is designed to lift 3 shackles, 82.5 meters of chain, plus the anchor. If you have more than this length of anchor chain vertically in the water, the windlass cannot lift the anchor anymore. Wow. The type of seabed is also important. In a seabed that is too muddy, I mentioned this in my previous video, the anchor will not hold. On the other hand, a rocky seabed, an anchor can get stuck between the rocks. Then it is hard or even impossible to heave it out without damage. Sand or clay are the preferred conditions. Choose an area where anchoring is allowed. On an official chart, you can see which areas are designated for anchoring and in which area this is prohibited. For obvious reasons, you are not allowed to anchor near submerged electricity or internet cables, gas pipes, or in areas with a lot of traffic. You should not anchor too close to another anchored vessel. When the wind or current changes, your ship will swing around its anchor. Make sure that there are no objects in the circle around the anchor your ship can reach, and stay out of the swinging circle of other ships. The radius of your swinging circle is roughly the length of the anchor plus the chain plus the length of the ship, minus the depth of the water. Okay, so the length of the anchor chain plus the length of the ship and the depth of the water. Now, I have a query here for anyone who's actually more knowledgeable than I am. If all the ships are anchoring in the same location, then presumably, and maybe this is where I'm wrong, any wind or current effects will affect all ships equally. Maybe that's where I'm misunderstanding this. I'm thinking if they're all chained together in a line and the current changes and it's suddenly 3 knots to east or whatever, then all of the ships presumably will swing round. Maybe they'll all swing round at different speeds. But I'm kind of in my head, I'm thinking like synchronized anchoring. Do you know what I mean? And therefore would never even if they are within each other's circle, would never actually hit each other. But maybe that's a ridiculous philosophy. I mean, I can see obvious issues with my theory because different sized and weight ships are going to react differently. Okay, I kind of answered my own question a bit there, haven't I? Plus, I guess wind and current can be slightly different depending on where you're anchored as well, despite being very close to each other. Okay, I take that back. I was an idiot, and now I've learnt an important lesson. It takes some time to complete the anchoring procedures, and when you want to leave an anchorage, that takes time as well. So it is only useful to anchor when you have to wait somewhere for a longer time. It is not always possible to anchor. For example, if the weather is too rough, wind and waves will cause forces on the anchor chain that exceed the limits it is designed for. In these circumstances, it is better to keep the ship sailing. The anchor is designed for a specific holding force. The requirements are set by the IACS. They state that an anchor and chain should hold if a ship is in 25 meters squared, 49 knots or 10 Beaufort. 25 meters per second, 49 knots or 10 Beaufort of wind. I'm with you now. And 2.5 meters per second knots of current. Blimey. And the anchor is in good holding ground. The scope of the chain is more than 6, but less than 10. I don't really understand what that means. But okay. However, this requirement assumes sheltered waters and does not take waves into account. In a wave height of 2 meters, the maximum values are just 11 meters per second, 21 knots or 6 Beaufort of wind, and 1.5 meters per second or 3 knots of current. If you expect worsening weather conditions, the anchor should be heaved in time to avoid dangerous situations for the deck crew. Yeah, makes sense. Alternative method. For large ships with a displacement of more than 100,000 tons, that's just mind-boggling when you think about that, isn't it? An alternative anchoring method was developed. When you follow this method, you do not move backwards in a straight line, but you move sideways while you drop the anchor. This reduces the forces on the anchor. Oh, interesting. Okay. You start at dead slow ahead and make a turn. You start at dead slow ahead and make a turn. Give full rudder. You stop the engine. I see. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then sideways. So the wind or current is coming this way. That's a 20-degree angle to the wind. Okay, so you stop the engine, 2. When the speed is less than 2 knots, you start lowering the anchor, but keep it above the seabed, 3. You stop the ship when the angle of the wind or current is about 20 degrees off the bow, and drop the anchor in the seabed, 4. You pay out the desired length of anchor chain while the ship is pushed sideways by the wind or current. Secure the chain on the guillotine at 5. This way the water slows down the ship and not the anchor. Right, the water slows down the ship, not the anchor. The ship moves astern on the wind or current and rotates parallel to it. The spring reduces the forces on the anchor chain and reduces the stopping distance. The realigning of the anchor chain also helps to slow down the ship. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, that's quite a lot to take in. How to complete the scenario. Slack the anchor when your speed is below 2 knots. Stop the ship in the correct heading, 20-degree angle with the wind, and pay out enough anchor chain. Wait for the ship to turn towards the anchor, and the scenario ends when the anchor holds and the heading speeds are correct. Okay. Alrighty then. We're probably going to cock this up at least a couple of times here, aren't we? Right, so let's get some forward momentum. We're already doing 4.9 knots, 5 knots. Okay, so I'm going to come to neutral. We're going to go full rudder to port. We are not turning at all here for some reason. We're doing 5 knots. Try turning the other way. No, we are not turning at all. Okay, bow thrusters. No, hang on, it's not bow thrusters. It is done with the rudder. Right, let's get some momentum then. We've got 1.4 knots of current coming from a south-southeasterly direction. Presumably that's not going to be helping us a huge amount. So let's try turning now. We are turning very, very slowly. We're going to have to give it more throttle because it just cannot turn here. Kind of feel like maybe we should be turning to starboard, but we shall see. Right, we're finally turning. So engine off. Slack the anchor. It's only 3 meters. I need a bit more than that. Oh, I forgot about that. Speed over ground has to be 2 knots. Ah, it's going to be so tricky, this one. So I wasn't expecting to have to put throttle on the ship, but it does seem like that is a necessity. I think this time I'm going to turn to starboard. I think that makes more sense because of the current. Let's give it another go. There's an awful lot to wrap your head around on this. So full rudder, full throttle, hard to starboard. Let's get a turn going. Much harder to turn to starboard than it was to port. Guess that's because we're fighting against the current. Oh, hang on, the wind is now suddenly at 20 degrees. When did that happen? Okay, well, the wind is where we want it. It was momentarily. That just sort of jumped round. It wasn't moving at all, and then all of a sudden it was in front of us. So now I'm going to have to correct that. Oh, I think we need true wind, right? Let's do this again. I think we need to change to true wind, otherwise we're not actually going to get the right position. We don't need relative wind, we need true wind. How somebody who doesn't know anything about sailing at all will figure that out, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that's what we need to do. That's going to help us, I think. Right, so swap to true wind, so the wind is behind us. Same with the current. Speed over ground. Right, okay. This time we'll turn to port, because that seemed to work a lot easier. So keeping my eye on the true wind angle. That's why the relative wind suddenly switched, because as we were picking up speed it was affecting everything. Right, okay. So the RPMs are picking up, the rudder is at full. Getting a slight turn. 6 degrees a minute. 8.6 knots of wind. That is quite windy. I do feel like we should have turned to starboard, because this island looks perilously close to our location right now. I'm really tempted to use the bow thrusters because it's going to be so much more effective, but it doesn't say that I can. I don't want to anger the tutorial. We're looking for a heading of 137. No, we're looking for a heading of 177, sorry. Not entirely sure we should have full throttles on. Maybe I'm doing the right thing, but it shouldn't be 100% throttle. It should be more like 50% throttle or something like that. When do you ease off? That's the question. I think when we get a heading of 210, I'm going to drop the throttle to 0, and hopefully she'll still come round but slow down quite a lot. Actually, I might do it at 215 just to give me a bit of headway. Okay, that's 215. We're going to get perilously close to this island on our port side. RPMs are at 0. Current speed over ground is 9.7 knots still. Definitely think I should have turned the other way. We're at 188 degrees, we need to be 177. I suppose the wind and the current are going to push us away from this island, so maybe it's not that bad a thing. Right, speed over ground appears to be coming down to 2 knots. Although this speed here is still very high. I'm not sure if I should be paying more attention to this or this. I don't know if you can see that on the video. No. Not the right camera angle right now. Am I paying attention to these values or these values? That's what I'm querying. Right, so we are pretty much bang on 177, which is where I wanted to be. So I'm happy with that. That worked out rather well. We just need our speed to slow right down. And it should, because the knots are against us. Okay, we've gone slightly past 177. Just trying to use the bow thruster to get the front of the ship exactly where I want it. Wow, that's maximum bow thrusters and we're barely holding steady. I guess that's a combination of the wind and the current working against us here somewhat. So we're not quite 20 degrees off the wind. We are starting to turn ever so slightly. Down to 25%. So let's hold it at 20%. See whether the angle goes up or down. Yeah, it's gone down. I thought it might. So let's try 30%. See if that holds steady at 30%. So our sideways movement is below the target. This movement is above. So I imagine this is too high. So I'm going to wait until we reduce our speed significantly. You see we're creeping back up to 177, which is where we want to be. The 28-30% seems to be holding us quite nicely. Drop the bow thrusters off just for a minute, just to get us centralized. Very slowly creep towards my target. We're at 177. I've dropped the bow thruster down to 10%. That should even us out. We should sort of hang around the 177 mark. I don't mind going up a little bit, but as long as we're holding that sort of 20 degrees, and we'll just keep an eye on the bow thrusters and make sure that happens. So our forward motion, 3.6 knots, that seems to be coming down rather slowly, one might add. Might just blip on the reverse thrusters a smidge, slows down quicker. I've got a sneaky suspicion that the game will not allow us to continue. Right, bow thrusters back up to 20%. Let's try and hold 177. Reverse thrusters now, trying to slow the ship right down. Okay, we need a bit more thruster, because we're now going back towards port side, which is not what we want. Just get that under control real quick. Look back to 30% bow thruster. Engines off. Engines forward, just to try and get us absolutely stationary. Right, so keeping in mind that the current is against us, the wind is against us, everything is pushing us backwards, we may need to put a small amount of throttle on. Bow thruster still being pushed round to the side, so 30 degrees is not enough. I'm just going to get the bow thruster back on the money. A lot of things to think about all at the same time. Okay, we're very slightly moving backwards there, so I'm just going to give 8% forward thruster just to try and keep us steady. And we'll put %30 bow thruster on, and I think that should be okay. Let's start slacking. Okay, engine's back to 0 because I think we're supposed to let it out. We're supposed to go sideways. Bow thrusters are overdoing their job. Bring them back to 0. Ping them back up to 30%. Trying to hold that angle. Right, looks like the anchor is going down. Try and give you a good view of this. So, rather annoyingly, it is going down, but we've got the wrong side, the anchor on the wrong side going down. So that's going to come under the ship, which is not what we want. But we are moving sideways, which is what we've been asked to do. And we're moving quite fast, which is a bit of a concern. Just a bow thruster, I don't really know how to stop that, but you can see that the anchor is definitely doing what it's supposed to be doing. If anything, we're moving a bit too slowly. I've got to work out how much I want to let out. Say 120 meters, I think that's probably the best we can hope for. Should have probably calculated that beforehand, but let's just see what happens with the anchor and the ship. So the anchor should drag a smidge, but then get caught in the ground. The flukes should dig in and hold us where we want to be. That's the theory. I'm going to go 40% bow thruster just to keep that front end of the ship at 20 degrees, which is where we want it. As the slack, you can see the tension is about 100 tons at the moment. Now, like I say, I have dropped the anchor on the wrong side, so I already know I've made a mistake. Whether or not the game deems that to be a failure, I won't know until it's too late, but I can't haul it in now very easily without turning the ship. Let's get those bow thrusters up to 60%. Because we're losing 3 degrees per minute at the moment. Also going backwards at 2 knots. It's maybe not too bad a thing, but I just want to keep the speed right down as much as possible. Right, we're about to see whether or not this is going to work. Okay, bow thrusters at maximum because we're still turning. Going to pull against the hull, which is a little concerning. Right, engines off because we're doing 2 knots forwards now. We don't want that. We want the current to take us, but we want the current to take us in about 2 minutes once the anchor's got some grip. Still turning to port, which is interesting. We've got 100% bow thruster on. That's not enough to stop it. So that is interesting. Don't think that's got anything to do with the anchor, but everything I'm doing right now is pretty much guesstimation, if that makes sense. See, we're very slowly extending that out. What? I have a sneaky suspicion that we didn't actually complete that. I think the reason why the game thinks we've done good there is because I have managed the speed of the ship. I have got the ship at exactly 0 knots, and although we're not 20 degrees off the wind, with the bow thrusters at maximum, we are holding a fairly straight line, which is what would indicate that an anchor is holding. But you can see the anchor flukes are not in the ground, and the chain itself is not even fully extended yet. So I kind of feel like I cheated a bit there. I'm going to have to put that to the community and ask them, because I don't feel like I did that right. I'm absolutely sure I should have dropped the port side anchor instead of the starboard side anchor. That was a mistake. That's a rookie mistake. I'm fairly convinced that the flukes are not holding properly, and I also believe that the chain is not fully extended, and therefore we haven't even tested whether or not the anchor is holding. So I think possibly this tutorial is flawed, but I'm a rookie trying to learn, so what do I know? Please do answer in the comments if you know below, because you know, I absolutely adore this sim and I want it to be the best it can be, and if that's not working properly, then the devs need to know about it. But I don't know enough to know for sure. It's just my instincts are telling me that I didn't do that properly. Yeah. Alright, should we press on? I can always give them a link to the exact time code. Right, I appear to have enough hard drive space left to do some more, so let's do double anchor. Double anchor. Now you've got to think about dropping double anchors because they could cross, you could have all sorts of problems. In fact, let's minimize that. Bring this back up. 2 anchors. Okay. Put this on so you can see it. For additional holding power or limiting the swing of your ship, you can use 2 anchors. This does require some extra work. First you drop 1 anchor, then you move sideways to drop the 2nd anchor. After that, you can let your ship move astern slowly. Typically, the anchors have an angle of 45 degrees. You can adjust the angle of the anchor chains by slacking it. Okay. Wind or current. It says wind or current. I would say current. I would think you would angle the ship towards the current. If there is a current, that's got to take precedence over the wind, I would think, in my head, but what the hell do I know? The anchors will be able to hold more when the angle is smaller. You can give the chain some more slack if necessary. Be aware that if the current and wind change direction, your ship moves to the other side of the anchors, the chains can get tangled. This can make it impossible to raise the anchor and cause fouled anchors. Yeah. How to complete the scenario. Deploy 1 anchor, move sideways, and deploy the 2nd anchor. Let the ship move astern on the current or wind until it stabilizes. Scenario completes when both anchors are holding. Okay. Okay. You're in a designated anchor area and expect strong currents. Use 2 anchors to secure the ship. Right, so this time I'm not looking for 20 degrees. I want to be head into the current, which I currently am. I am head into the current right now. So we've got true wind coming in from a northeasterly direction. So I'm going to say we're going to drop the starboard. I've got a bit of engine on here. Slow the ship down. So we should be doing 2 knots. I can now slack the starboard side. What have we got? 7.8 meters, so 50 plus the length of the ship, which is what? I don't know what the length of the ship is. Should we agree to 85 meters? Oh, seems to have a bit of thruster on the engine there. It's actually gone up to 7.8 meters, so it's going to be more like 100 meters, I think, this anchor. Oh wow, look at this cool ship. I've not been on this ship before. This is the Coast Guard ship. A 100 meters just seems like too much. I'm going to go for 85 like we originally said. That's 85 meters. We're very slowly moving back. But we're not moving sideways, and I have no bow thrusters. So how does one move sideways when the current is coming in the way that it is? Right, we're actually moving back at 6 knots, which is a bit too fast. I'm going to give us a bit of thrust and get that slowed right down. So when it says move sideways, it doesn't really tell you how to move sideways. I'm thinking the wind might contribute to our sideways movement. We've got 8.6 knots of relative wind. I would think that would move us slightly sideways. Let's have a look at the anchor and see if we are. There's a small amount of sideways movement there. We're talking like maybe 5 feet or something. Not really enough to make it make sense. So how sideways do we want to be? Maybe that's sideways enough, do you think? Do you think? Right. Let's try it. Well, that just hit the side of the ship. We don't want that too much. See, again, I've got to argue the fact that I don't think we've proven that the anchors are holding. I've just managed the speed of the ship very well. And that is not the same thing, is it? It did say that the narrower the anchors are together, the stronger they will hold. So initially I was thinking one here, one all the way over here or something. But if what they're saying is true, then, you know, 2 fairly close together but not too close together maybe makes more sense. I don't know. I don't think there's enough information there for me to really understand that. So we've passed that, but I question whether or not we actually passed that. And that's a very cool ship that I look forward to sailing at some point. So we'll say okay. But again, I implore you, if you know more than I do, which is probably 90% of you out there, then please do give me some feedback on that, because I don't think we did it properly. And I don't think the tutorial gave me enough information, and I don't think that the scenario rules are quite accurately done. I don't know. I'm going to have to share this with the community and see what they say. In an emergency, the anchors can be the last resort to keep a ship from grounding. The windlass is designed so it can be used without power, so you should always be able to drop the anchors. There is no guarantee that the anchors will successfully stop the ship, especially for larger ships. The forces can quickly become too strong for the anchor equipment. To increase the chances of success, the ship should make a sharp turn to slow it down, assuming steering is still an option. Quickly decide which side is the best location to come to a stop. When the ship is turning, the anchor inside the turn should be released. Let a large amount of chain run freely, then apply the brake to stop the chain with the windlass and secure the chain with the guillotine. The ship pulls the chain straight, and hopefully the chain and anchor can stop the ship. If it fails, you still have another anchor that you could drop immediately. The other side of the ship is now turning away from that anchor, so it should not damage the hull. Okay. So it needs to be released, not eased. Okay. How to complete this scenario. First, steer to the side, then drop the anchor. When you've stopped the ship, SOG below 2 knots, the scenario will complete. And that's the end of the course. Okay. The basics of anchoring. Okay, so there's probably going to be more courses coming over time, I would imagine. Right. Let's have a crack at this then. You are underway when your ship experiences a mechanical failure. Use the emergency anchoring method to stop your ship. Now, I really like the idea of a mechanical failure. I would like that to be implemented into the actual sailing in the game. You know, maybe there are some scenarios where you're sailing along and then all of a sudden you lose all engine power, all electrics go, something like that. I'd love that kind of thing. That would be really, really cool. Right, so clearly, I mean, I don't even have to look very far. There's land to our starboard side, and although there is land to our port side, there's more space to turn. So we're definitely turning to port. Oh, he says that. He says that and then realises you've lost your main propulsion. Right, so we can't turn to port because there's a ship coming. We can't turn this way either. So at the moment, we just have to keep going forwards. I'm going to do all this from external camera because I think it's going to look better for you, be more entertaining for you. So we've lost our main propulsion, but do we have bow thrusters? We still have bow thrusters, so I'm going to go... Okay, they're back to front. That's not right. Hang on a moment, caller. My bow thrusters are not behaving as they should do. So, let's get this straight. That one's working okay. This one is not. So, bow thruster. I've lost my flipping view. They are fixing this bug. They've told me they've definitely fixing it. Right, so that's working. So we've got bow thruster to port, starboard thruster to bow thruster to port, starboard thruster to starboard. We are not turning the way I was expecting to turn. We're in fact turning the opposite way than I was expecting. But okay. That's actually better. Because we have more space over here and less people. So, we're currently doing 9.5 knots. So we're going to be dropping the port anchor and we're going to hit release. We're not going to slack it, we're going to release it completely in the hopes that we save ourselves. I think there's a buoy out there as well, just off our starboard side. Right, so we're turning nice and fast. We have 0.4 knots of current, but I've no idea. Oh, it's coming from 257 degrees. So maybe I can turn into that. The wind is behind us though. Right, we're down to 5.2 knots. 5.1. I can't remember now if there was a minimum speed you had to be travelling at before it would graciously accept. Get some rotation going on this so we can have some full camera views. Difficult to get to my mouse here. Oh, hang on, we turn inside, so sorry, we're going to release the starboard anchor. So we should it did turn off. That was unexpected. Alright, we're down to 3.8, 3.9 knots. It's difficult to tell now that everything... Oh god, there's a ship coming in behind us, look. Right, now, if you look, we're actually turning the opposite way now. The way that I originally wanted to turn. So we want to get to 257. So that, damn it, now that means we do want to drop the port anchor. 3.2 knots. We're nearly at 257. As soon as we hit 257, I shall drop the anchors. I think that's our best bet of stopping. Try and get behind the ship so you can see what I'm actually doing. I'm trying to turn into the current so that slows us down. But stop turning the bow. Stop turning the stern rather. Stop turning the bow. Start slowing it down. So we're going to release the port side. That's not a good sound. Right, we're at 257. Trying to get the ship to straighten up and sit still. Right, I think we're there. We're around about central. We're facing into the current, which is coming in at 257 degrees. We're slightly off that. I mean, marginally off that. A bit of bow thruster should help keep that. Oops. A bit of bow thruster should help keep that steady. And the ship that's coming in really ought to be making better effort to not be smack bang coming into us here, but oh, look at that. There's not a lot of gap between that little island there. Is it an island? It's not an island, it's just a real shallow section. Again, I don't really think we've achieved that. You can see the anchor is there, it's very loose. We're not actually attached to it per se. We've also got a massive cruise liner I have to zoom out a bit here so you can see this. Got a massive cruise liner coming in right next to us. You can't really see it very well. How on earth he's going to get over that lump of dirt that's there? Presumably he's going to have to go between that lump of dirt and where we are. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe that scenario ended too quickly. There is a gap there, and maybe he can make that gap. It's very difficult to say. Yeah, that was a tricky one. Especially seeing as how the ship started turning the opposite direction than I was expecting it to. That threw me a bit. We got there in the end, though. We were facing towards the current. We got the anchor down. We had a second anchor should we need it. Maybe I let too much out on the anchor, perhaps. Could argue, but I think I get the impression that the anchor tutorials need a bit of extra work. I know they're only beginner anchoring tutorials, and maybe that's why they're not that precise. I don't know. But I definitely feel like more work could be done in that department. But I'd rather hear from people who actually know what they're talking about. So if you know what you're talking about, and you have opinions on whether or not the anchor course tutorials are good or bad or indifferent, please do let me know your thoughts, because yeah, I have some concerns about it, but I'm not, you know, I don't really know enough to know for sure whether or not I did a good job or a bad job there, to be honest. I really genuinely don't. All I can do is rely on the course and tutorial itself, and that's what I'm doing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you appreciate that. I appreciate you watching, is what I meant to say. And I shall see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Goodbye for now.